I see the born of no return. Just ahead now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday again, Tuesday, November 25th, 2014. My name is Gary Hendershot. You're listening to Wide Awake News on the Rents Radio Network. And I'm sitting here crossing my fingers, hoping that all the buttons I've pushed are actually going to work. I got hit with a strange one over the weekend. I broadcast this show using two fairly modern computers. They're, not top of the line, but they're pretty strong, and, I refer to them commonly as my primary and my secondary. Yeah, okay, big deal. All this techie mumbo jumbo. But a strange thing happened. Saturday I noticed that, the computers were acting a little funky. And by Sunday, both of them were totally unresponsive. So I spent all of Sunday afternoon, most of yesterday, total of about 18 man-hours, with a lot of baling wire, bubble gum, and duct tape, putting both of these computers together. It's a very complex software load that I use, and it takes, oh my goodness, a day and a half to reload all the software. So if your operating system goes kerfuffle on you, it's a real challenge getting it all put back together. But I think I've got everything pretty stable at this point. So we gonna press right on. And just so nobody forgets, yes, I still love Obamacare, and I understand that our good friend Mr. Gruber is going to be called before the Congress to explain his comments about you dumb American voters who have such a short attention span that they can slide something like Obamacare right in over you. Isn't that sweet? Yes. So I wanted to remind everybody, we do have some serious news to discuss tonight, but I certainly do not want you to forget that I just love Obamacare. Thank you, Obama, for that free health care. I just sleep so good at night knowing that I got free health care. Pressing right on. I guess, the big news has got to be Ferguson, Missouri. I got a report here in front of me from RT. And I guess you can forgive RT for not really understanding the way U.S. judicial system works, but their report is that the grand jury in Missouri made a decision to acquit. They used the word acquit Officer Darren Wilson of any culpability in the death of Michael Brown. It wasn't an acquittal. What they did is they decided that based on the evidence presented, they were not going to proceed with charging him. So Mr. Wilson has not been to trial, so he's not even been charged with anything. So it's not really an acquittal. It's a situation where the grand jury looked at all the available evidence and based on that evidence decided that they would not bring charges against the police officer, Darren Wilson. Now, most of us who've been following this case kind of figured that was going to be the way it was going to go. I mean, we've seen so many of these police shooting incidents where, the cops, at best, they get a slap on the hand. I mean, and I think one of the reasons why there has been so much rage associated with this killing of Michael Brown by this police officer, Darren Wilson, is because it just keeps coming and coming and coming. The number of these police shootings just seems to be outrageous. Those of us with a few years under their belts, we remember a kinder, simpler America where, your local cop was, a nice guy. If you saw him, you waved at him and he waved back, and, they might even offer him a cup of coffee or something, But nowadays, it's gotten to the point where the police have become militarized to a point where it's almost like we feel like we feel like we're Palestinians in Gaza, facing off against the Israeli military. I mean, you don't snap to attention and say yes sir to the guy in the blue suit with a gun on his side. You're liable to get shot. It's a very perplexing situation. I wish I had a solution to this problem, but it appears that there has been an ongoing trend within police departments all over the country. This is not just limited to Ferguson, Missouri. All over the country, the relationship between the public and the police department, that in theory is supposed to be there to protect and serve, that relationship has become strained. And, I wish I knew exactly what the cause was and exactly how to solve it, but I'm afraid I'm just not that smart. I'm just an old Southern boy with straw for brains. I really don't know how to solve this problem. I do know that it is a problem. It's an ongoing problem. And frankly, unless the United States comes to terms with this and finds some solution, it could lead to more violence. Now, everybody pretty much expected that when the verdict, if you want to call it that, of the grand jury came down, that there would probably be protests. And you betcha, there were protests in Seattle. There were protests in New York. There were protests in Oakland. And some of the protests did get ugly, particularly in Ferguson, Missouri. Rioters and looters waged a campaign of destruction that saw numerous businesses burned, looted. There were some injuries. Frankly, the reports are still coming in. I've heard a number of numbers on just how many people were injured during the various protests around the country. I do know that in Ferguson, some 61 people were arrested during the protests, and it's a sad state of affairs when people feel so disempowered, so enraged at the system, that they'd basically burn down their own neighborhoods to protest a disagreeable verdict. that one again, it's very hard to understand the rage and frustration. I mean, I can understand people looking at this killing of Michael Brown. I can understand. Okay, so he's a young fella, 18, 19 years old, had his entire life ahead of him. He was unarmed, faced off against a police officer, and was shot. Now, the circumstances of the shooting are kind of murky. Here again, we've heard a number of different spins on this. Some say that Brown was the aggressor, and there is some evidence to support that. Other reports indicate that this guy, Wilson, had a chip on his shoulder, basically challenged Brown's, I don't know, machismo, his masculinity or whatever, apparently pushed just the right buttons to enrage this young man to the point where, he had to push back. Pushing back against police officers these days apparently is a death sentence offense. Not sure. Wilson claims that he was in fear for his life. He claims that Brown attempted to get hold of his pistol, and that the only thing he could do to ensure his safety was to shoot Brown 6 times. Some reports say that Wilson fired a lot more than 6 rounds, but 6 of them connected and killed Mr. Brown. So how are our elected officials, our public servants, public servants, yeah, don't you wish? I remember when they were public servants, but how are our elected officials responding to the protests? Well, a fellow named Dick Durbin says we need to put a committee together to study up on civil rights. Yeah, civil rights. I thought that was the mantra back during the Johnson administration. Didn't we already address that one? But yeah, he said, we're going to have a commission. We're going to put together a bunch of commissions. We're going to hire a think tank or whatever they do. A lot of times when politicians come out with nonsense like this, like we're going to solve the problem by putting together a commission. I remember the old, Andy Rooney movies where their kids are sitting around trying to think about, how they're going to raise enough money to do something or another. Say, let's put on a show. And it just seems to me that, when they come up with these ideas for these high-powered commissions, that what they're really doing is they're just putting on a show, to make people feel warm and fuzzy that your government really does care about you. And after 2 or 3 years and a few $1 million, the commission will come back with a report that says, hey, problem solved. Everybody's, been lulled back to sleep. We can press on. So, yeah, that's what we're going to do about this problem we've got in Ferguson, Missouri, is we're going to put together a commission, and we're going to study up on what we can do about civil rights. Don't you feel better knowing that your government is hard at work to solve this problem? Eric Holder, yeah, you thought you were done with him, didn't you? Well, he's still there. He's turned in his resignation, but he's still there. But two federal investigations into the shooting of Michael Brown continue, despite the Monday announcement of a St. Louis County grand jury's decision not to indict police officer Darren Wilson. Outgoing U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder said Monday that the U.S. Department of Justice is still in the midst of 2 investigations stemming from the August 9th shooting of 18-year-old Brown. Federal prosecutors are attempting to determine whether Officer Darren Wilson should be subject to civil rights charges for the incident. The Justice Department is also involved in a wider probe of the entire Ferguson Police Department based on long criticized policing tactics. Interesting. Holder said such cases have a high legal bar, adding that federal investigators have resisted forming premature conclusions. But they're going to study. They're going to they're going to talk about a commission or something. Who knows? Yeah. And in other news, it seems that a 12-year-old boy in Cleveland was shot to death by police officers. Now, at least this young man, 12 years old, was armed with an airsoft pistol. A pair of officers approached Rice, who was told to raise his hands. He was shot twice by one of the officers when he reached for the pellet gun in his waistband. Well, that's the cop's story. He did not, according to official accounts, point the airsoft gun at police or verbally threaten the officers. I hope those in the audience understand the distinction between a firearm and an airsoft pistol. Now, in favor of the cops, this airsoft pistol had its orange tip removed. Usually an airsoft pistol will have a little orange-colored tip on the barrel, so that even from a distance you can clearly tell, okay, this is a kid with a toy gun. This one apparently had the little orange thing removed. And I guess to somebody who, was either unskilled at making detailed observation, this might have looked like a real firearm. I'm not sure. But an airsoft gun propels a plastic BB at roughly 200 feet per second. Some of the really powerful ones can propel one of these plastic pellets at an astounding rate of about 400, maybe 450 feet per second. Unlike the 9mm projectile that comes out of a typical handgun at 12 to 1500 feet per second. The muzzle energy of an airsoft pistol at very close range, say 4 or 5 feet, is probably enough to break the skin. I mean, you would probably get a bruise, maybe even potentially bleed, but it's doubtful if the plastic pellet would penetrate your skin, even at close range. A 9mm, on the other hand, at close range, will go right through you, unless it's a hollow point type bullet. There is a substantial difference in the appearance and the performance of an airsoft gun and a firearm. I think back when I was a kid, and me and my buddies used to get together and we used to play, army, and one group would be the Germans and we'd be the Americans, and we'd all have toy guns, and some of our screaming and yelling and cap guns going off, probably sounded like a small war. I think back to those days, and it was harmless child's play. And, the parents would, kind of shrug, and, nobody, unless somebody, got a bloody knee or, an accident happened or something, the parents, they tolerated it. And nobody ever called the cops or thought it was anything weird. It was just boys out in the field, playing a stupid game. Nowadays, in this, nanny state mentality we've got, kids don't even get to act like kids anymore. They don't get to play the way we would have taken it for granted back when I was a kid. I mean, the way we played as children today, we'd probably be swept up and sent to Guantanamo. I'm not sure if that's really an advance in our culture. That's something you've got to think about. Make up your own damn mind. Now, a lot has been made over this shooting in Ferguson. Everybody seems to want to make it all about race. And I think, it's probably wise that we stop for a moment and think, are there racial implications to this Ferguson event? We're going to talk about that when we come back. I'm hearing the music in the background, so I do have to step out for a short breather while the studio sells some goods. But hang in there. I'll be back with some more Barking at the Moon right after these important commercial announcements. Alrighty, we're back from our break. Let's see here. Ferguson, Missouri. Darren Wilson. Michael Brown. Michael Brown, as it happens, was a young black man. Darren Wilson, the police officer who shot him dead, happened to be white. Now, as it turns out, most of the police officers in Ferguson, Missouri, are white, while most of the local population is black. So a lot of people want to make this whole thing about race. And you got, these race pimps like Al Sharpton out there preaching that, white people just, have absolutely no respect for black life, and that these white cops do these things, because they have no respect for the life of a young black man. That is the story that's being sold to the black community. The black leadership, or those who, nominally are the leaders of their community, are telling them that as a white person, I have no respect for black life. That, shooting a black kid just, shouldn't even faze me. Is that true? Or are they just trying to stir up trouble? There are those out there who I think want there to be racial divide. When you think about it, America's got a lot of problems. And most of the problems in the United States center around our, what Eisenhower called, military-industrial complex. Now, these days, I think I would kind of expand that to include pharmaceutical, the agribiz, basically our economic system here in the United States has very quickly evolved into what is clearly a fascist economic system, where business interests, and yes, defense contractors are certainly a big part of that. The banking industry is a huge component of it. The medical industry, which would, I think, include pharmaceuticals, is a big chunk of it. These corporations, have pretty much taken control over our government. I mean, think about it. I mean, if you're a big pharmaceutical company, you're a big defense contractor, and you lavish big bucks on those who pass the laws, you probably have a much better chance of getting laws passed that favor your interest than average Joe, whether he's white, black, pink, purple, or blue. Because when you're elected to Congress, or when you're elected to the Senate, or when you become the President of the United States, the only color that really matters to you appears to be green. And those who go through the chambers of the high and mighty in Washington and lavish big chunks of cash seem to get pretty much anything they want, including wars, laws to make sure that you buy products that they want you to buy, whether you want them or not. Obamacare. So, we have these serious problems that whether you are black, white, yellow, whatever color you happen to be, we should all be facing off against the real enemy to all of us. But no, if we could force a wedge between the white people and the black people, if we could force a wedge between the brown people and the black people, if we could get them fighting amongst themselves, fighting each other, they won't have time to be looking at us. And sometimes when I see the Al Sharptons of the world out there trying to stir the pot, trying to get things going, wondering who the hell is paying this guy's bills, okay? The guy has not had an honest job, and I can't remember how long. The guy, I don't think, has ever filed a tax return. How is this guy, Al Sharpton, how is he the spokesman for the black community? Who elected him? But no, he's out there telling all the black people, oh, those white people don't like you. They'll gun you down just because you're black. Look at what's happened here. This cop did that and that cop did that. Well, a lot of that has to do with the us and them mentality that's drilled into the cops. The cops are trained. They are specifically trained to consider you a criminal who just hasn't been caught yet. You're guilty of something, and it's up to them to figure out what the hell it is. They just haven't caught you yet. So, crime in America. Now, this is from a report that was last updated in 2005. I don't know that these statistics are still relevant today, but apparently they were relevant in the mid-1990s, and they were relevant again in 2005 when this report was put together. The report is called Race, Crime, and Justice in America. Crime rates. Blacks are 7 times more likely than people of other races to commit murder and 8 times more likely to commit robbery. Now, these are statistics. These are compiled from crime statistics. When blacks commit crimes of violence, they are nearly 3 times more likely than non-blacks to use a gun, and more than twice as likely to use a knife. Hispanics commit violent crimes at roughly 3 times the rate of white races. And Asians commit violent crimes at about 1/4 that of the white race. So I guess, if you want to move into a really safe neighborhood, move into a neighborhood populated by Asians, because, they're obviously much less likely to commit criminal acts than blacks, Hispanics, or white people. The single best indicator of violent crime levels in an area, we're talking a geographic area, is the percentage of the population that is black and or Hispanic. Of the nearly 770,000 violent interracial crimes, criminal activities between one racial group and another, committed every year involving blacks and whites. Blacks commit 85% and whites commit 15%. So even though the black population in the United States is about 1/5 that of whites, they commit 85% of the interracial crimes. Interesting statistics. So when you understand those types of statistics, does that justify Darren Wilson's fear for his life when he was confronted by Michael Brown? I'm sure as a cop he was probably aware of such statistics. These statistics are derived from criminal crime reports nationwide. Could that have been part of the motivation? We'll be back right after this short break while the studios sell some more goods. I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, and we're back from that blatantly commercial interruption of the evening's festivities. Got a message here in the chat room asking if I can jack up my audio level to Wide Awake News. I assume that means to the Rents feed. Actually, I send them a balanced feed. They control the volume on their end. So if I jacked up my volume, headed out to them, I suspect they'd probably turn it down to get their levels right. So I can't really help you much on that one. Sorry. I want to finish up real quick on this Ferguson thing. I suspect that protests are going to continue to evolve. I mean, we even had protests here in the Washington D.C. metropolitan area. There were folks standing outside the White House holding their hands up. And I don't think this is going to be the last one of these police-involved shootings, as this shooting of this 12-year-old kid in Cleveland has shown. I mean, we have had so many of these incidents in recent times. And frankly, I think a lot of it has to do with this militarization of the police. More and more, the police are no longer, the good old guy on the block who, keeps the peace. They're not really peace officers anymore. More and more, they're turning into what appears to be an occupying military force. As long as the police are trained in that methodology and act like a occupying force, I think we will continue to have incidents like what happened in Ferguson. And whether it's a black person or a white person that's being shot by the police. And yeah, so many of these people who, want to make this into a racial thing, so many of them forget that this militarized police force is indeed killing races other than blacks. This is a problem, I think, with the way the police departments are trained and the way they tend to operate. They ain't Andy and Mayberry anymore, that's for sure. Now, moving right along, I do have a couple of other items in the news that I kind of want to discuss. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but in my day job, I'm something of an IT guru. I am paid pretty well, I might add, to know more about computer systems than most. Well, gee, how come your computer system blew up over the weekend? Well, yeah, my computer system blew up, but I was smart enough to put it all back together again. So I guess I'll claim guilty and innocent on that one. But, on Sunday, a report came out of a a virus that has apparently been out there in the wild since about 2008. The discovery was made by the antivirus firm Symantec, and their reports are, having analyzed this malware and looked at the Snowden documents, I'm convinced Regian, I'm not sure how they're going to pronounce this thing. I've only seen it in print. I haven't heard anybody else say its name. So it's R-E-G-I-N, Regian, probably Regian, is used. I am convinced Regian is used by British and American intelligence services. Security expert at Fox IT company Ronald Prinz told The Intercept. Regian's appearance was detected by antivirus developer Symantec on Sunday. That's just this past Sunday. According to the company, the cyber spying tool was found to infect government buildings, telecoms, small businesses, and individuals in dozens of countries as far back as 2008. Russia and Saudi Arabia have reportedly been subject to 28 to 24% of the total number of attacks, respectively. Former NSA contractor Edward Snowden leaked secret documents in 2013 revealing the U.S. government's secret global surveillance programs. Now, I don't think Snowden came out and said specifically that, well, actually he did. He did indicate that, but it appears that this malware may indeed have been put together by government spy agencies, either here in the United States or in the UK, or actually there's very high probability this thing came out of Israel. You know, they're very good at this. You know, they were the ones who developed the Stuxnet and so many of these other malware that have been infecting systems globally. This one apparently is an intelligence gathering tool that seems to have found its way onto computers that are operated by governments that folks might be interested in what they're doing, which I guess is one of the reasons why typewriters are starting to sell so good these days. I'm not sure how this Regian software infects a computer. But I can tell you that unless somebody gets physical access to your computer, there's any number of ways that you might pick up an infection. I mean, browsing an infected website can, in some cases, get you infected. Now, you'll stand there and say, oh, but I got the latest and greatest antivirus software, and there's no way anybody's going to get to me. Well, you know, the fact of the matter is, all of these viruses have a signature, a little piece in the code that's recognizable. Okay, and the way antivirus software works is it scans a suspected file and looks for this signature. Some of them actually operate on a heuristic algorithm where they know the types of things that viruses do, and they're able to monitor your system and figure out if a program is doing one of these evil things that would lead the software to believe that it might be some sort of a virus or Trojan. The heuristic type scans consume a tremendous amount of computer horsepower. Very few consumer level antivirus software packages do this heuristic scanning. Most of them do the signature type scanning. They look for a little snippet in the code that's being loaded into memory. They look for this signature of that code. So it has to be a malicious piece of code that is recognized by the antivirus software. And as with most crime and policing activities, the criminals are most often just this far ahead of the cops. And in the case of viruses, computer viruses, The guys who develop these things are usually this much ahead of the fellows who are trying to find them. A virus has to be out, it has to escape into the wild, has to be detected, and a signature has to be determined for that virus before your antivirus software can respond. Now, how this Regin malware managed to stay out there undiscovered since 2008, that is probably an indication related to its sophistication. This thing was apparently very stealthy, very difficult to find, and this may be one of a whole new variety of computer viruses that the best antivirus software will not be able to find. So, before you send me a note saying, but I use a Macintosh, or I use a Linux, and I just want to tell you that the very first virus I ever saw was back in the days when the old Fat Mac was a popular machine. And a fella called me in and he says, "Hey, you gotta fix my Macintosh. It's doing something really weird." And I said, "Okay, well, what is it doing?" And I get out, I look at it, and he says, "Watch this. Watch what happens when I eject this CD from this machine." So he hits the button, and the CD ejects, and the sound card on the Macintosh does a resounding "blah." Yeah, it made a sound like it was puking as the CD was ejected. So the very first virus I ever encountered in my IT career happened to be on a Mac. So, don't tell me that your Macintosh can't become infected. Don't tell me that your Linux machine can't be infected. The fact of the matter is, Microsoft tends to own a large market share in consumer workstation space. So, yeah, if I was going to develop a virus, chances are I would develop one to target the largest potential audience. That just happens to be Windows. But don't think your Mac or your Linux machine is totally immune. It's not. Chuck Hagel. Chucky Hagel. This guy was kind of an odd bird to be Secretary of Defense anyway. I mean, frankly, in many ways, he's kind of a peacenik. But, he did the job, and some would say he did the job admirably. But apparently he's being forced out, and it'll be an indication of where we're headed in the near term with regards to warfare around the world. Keep an eye on this one. Keep an eye on who's going to replace Hagel. A number of names have been floated. Let's just see who they put in charge of Hagel. If they put somebody like Insane McCain or somebody of that ilk in there, you can bet that the last couple of years of Obama's administration are going to bring you nothing but wars, more wars, and yet more wars. Chuck Hagel was kind of a voice of sanity when everybody started talking about, let's go invade Syria, let's do this. Hagel said, wait a minute, what are we going there to achieve? What is our plan for getting in, get the job done, and get out? In that respect, it was a breath of sanity. He was kind of a balancing force. But, he fell out of favor, and now Chucky Hagel is gone. Well, I think I've done my share of barking at the moon for this Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation, and you betcha I'll be back next Tuesday, and we will do it again. Good night, all. Okay, I think I've got this thing all set up to normalize. Let's see, did I miss anything? I think I got them all. I managed to get through all of my news items. Post-game time. Let's see. let's see how much of this chat did I miss. At least 5 times a day. And so you're updating your antivirus software, yeah. The problem is, it's like I said, the viruses that are out there have to be recognized. Somebody like Symantec has to come along. There's a number of other outfits that have the computer forensics capability. What I have here is I have a packet logger on my firewall. I have a separate piece of firewall hardware that operates a piece of software called pfSense. It's it's a piece of free software. I had to buy a piece of computer hardware strong enough to run it. But pfSense has the ability to log packets, so I can actually review periodically the traffic going out from my system and the traffic coming into my system. So, I can look for obvious malicious activity. If my computer had one of these spywares on it, like, say, this Regen software that was just discovered this past Sunday, I would be able to see, based on my firewall logs, this piece of software, when ET calls home and gives all my banking information and all my browsing history and all that, when it tries to upload it to the mothership, I would see that activity in my firewall logs. Now, my firewall does have incoming. It scans incoming material to look for signatures, but I doubt very seriously if my firewall would see this Regen software coming in, and I'm sure that the antivirus software that I run on my workstation here, I'm sure that it would not have seen a signature to put a red flag up saying, hey, here's this Regen thing. But in my periodic review of my firewall logs, I would probably have seen the activity of this thing harvesting data and pushing it up to its mothership. So, that's how people become suspicious. If you're a big company, you've got an IT guy that you have hired to sit there and look at your firewall logs and see if anything is going on in your system that looks suspicious. If you find something that looks suspicious, then you have to take it to the next level where you actually do the forensics to figure out what the hell bad guy is doing this malicious activity. It's very expensive. It costs a lot of money to do something like that. It's not inexpensive. The average home user would be absolutely overwhelmed at the cost. To hire somebody like me to come in and do this computer forensics where they actually, can figure out whether or not you are indeed infected by something as stealthy as this Regen malware, it would cost you, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So, is the average consumer capable of doing something like that? No. You have to depend on somebody like Symantec to find it and then build into their antivirus software that signature that helps the antivirus software determine, yes, this file coming in is infected, don't load that. And then, of course, there's always the idiot who, even after the antivirus software comes up and says, don't do that, it's dangerous, they push the do it anyway button anyhow. Anyway, that was it for tonight's planned presentation. I actually managed to get through all of my planned presentations. But, one of the things I'd like to ask the audience now is this Ferguson thing's not over yet, okay? Chances are this guy, Darren Wilson, chances are he's now going to be sued. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the Brown family doesn't, try and get a pound of flesh out of him through through some sort of civil procedure. Chances are this guy Wilson, chances are his life is ruined. It's a shame. I have to feel a certain amount of sympathy for this guy Wilson, and yet I have to feel a certain amount of sympathy for this young kid Brown. I hear so much of this what I consider racist commentary from some of the people who comment on my videos and so forth. Black kid, thug, got what he deserved, on and on and on and on and on. Okay, look, when did stealing some cigars, pushing a store clerk, or mouthing off to a cop, when did those become crimes punishable by summary execution? Okay? Okay. And the other, this kid, although, a lot of these accusations have been tossed around. Oh, he went for the cop's gun. He stole some cigars. He mouthed off to the cop. A lot of these allegations have come, but, there are also allegations that say Brown was walking down the street. Yes, he was in the street, not on the sidewalk. The cop pulls alongside of him and says, hey, kids, how much you want to bet? This guy Wilson looked at Brown and said, hey, boy, get off the street, get on the sidewalk. How much you want to bet? It was something like it. And to this cop, he wasn't thinking, hey, boy, was that big a deal? He's a boy. He's 18 years old. He's not a man yet. He's still a boy. Hey, boy, get out of the street. Get on the sidewalk. Now, of course, to Brown, he took that personal. What are you calling boy? And okay, so immediately Brown is you have offended my machismo. So now I am fighting words, man. Okay, how much you want to bet? See, I wasn't there. I don't know, but somehow this thing escalated to the point where a young man's dead. And the one fact that these people who keep calling this Brown kid, they keep calling him a thug, coconut, monkey, and all these other racial slurs, got what he deserved. Bullshit, okay? Stealing some cigars, mouthing off at a cop, walking down the street is not a death sentence activity. Maybe Brown went for the guy's gun, maybe not. But at the time, the shots that killed Brown, at the time those shots were fired, there was considerable distance between Brown and the car, about 150 feet, about 150 feet. So, the immediate danger of Brown getting control over the police officer's pistol was over. But perhaps this guy Wilson, perhaps his adrenaline was just, on overdrive, or perhaps he took an extra shot of steroids that day. I don't know. I wasn't there. But, the things that bother me most about this whole thing is that Brown was unarmed, okay? Yeah, he was no angel. Yeah, he may have been a thug. He may have stolen some cigars. He may have pushed a store clerk. And yeah, he was a vicious jaywalker walking down the street instead of on the sidewalk. But, none of these activities warrant summary execution. Whether the kid was white, black, green, pink, purple, or blue. You don't just shoot an unarmed man for walking down the street, mouthing off at you. You don't even shoot him for stealing some cigars. That's my point of view. I have made up my mind on this situation. Now, is Wilson guilty of, murder? Probably not. But you know what? He's guilty of manslaughter for sure. Just looking at the circumstances and the situation, I don't think I could have let him off with anything less than at least a manslaughter charge. Is he going to, spend the rest of his life in a 6x9 with Bubba? No, probably not. But I'll tell you what, he'd never again wear a badge or carry a gun. Anyway, that's my point of view on it. You got to make up your own damn mind. This thing ain't over yet, and I suspect we're going to see more incidents like this as time goes on until we somehow find a way to get control of our police back. Our police seem to be out of control. They're no longer our public servants who are out there to protect and serve us. They seem to be operating on a level that we haven't seen in the United States up until recently. It's more like the Stasi in East Germany. Anyway, what did I miss in the news this week, guys? You know, there's probably some hot items in the news that got past me. So, who out there? You said anyone comes at you, you would shoot them. Well, anyone comes at me. At me how? I mean, have they got a weapon? I mean, are they going to do me bodily harm? What about trying to take your gun and kill you? Well, you know, I tell you, there apparently was a scuffle in the car. Now, whether Wilson pulled his gun, pointed it at Brown, Brown grabbed hold of the gun to try to get it out of his face, or whether Brown initiated it and tried to go after the gun while it was still in the holster, that's not clear. That's not clear. So, see, I don't know. I mean, if I was in a shoving match with somebody and they pulled a gun and stuck it in my face, yes, I think I would probably grab hold of the gun and try to, but 2 shots were indeed fired in the car. That is correct. That is correct. You know, the problem is, what weight do you put on that? How, you know, I wasn't there. I didn't see the circumstances. Don't know. Don't know. JFK anniversary. You know, I should have done some coverage on the JFK anniversary. New revelations. Well, you know, the mob did it, right? It was all about the mafia. Mafia did it, or them Cubans. They did it, right? You know, yeah. Have you heard about the 24 pages on 9/11? You know, so you know there's a very high probability that John F. Kennedy was shot by more than one person from more than one organization. There were a lot of people. A lot of people were out to get Kennedy, and I suspect that the assassination was probably organized by. You know, it was a 7 days in May type of scenario. It was probably organized by higher ups in the U.S. military. There was a lot of a lot of stars and a lot of screaming chickens that organized that one. Probably executed by the CIA. They to keep deniability. You know, they probably hired Cuban mercenaries to do most of the shooting. You know, here again, you know, a lot of speculation on that. I've heard a lot of different stories, a lot of different evidence. But you know, one thing I know for sure: Lee Harvey Oswald was not a lone nut assassin. As a matter of fact, Lee Harvey Oswald, it may turn out, you know, as you know, long after I'm dead and the real skinny really comes out, it may turn out that Lee Harvey Oswald was actually trying to stop the assassination. He may indeed have been Bobby Kennedy's man on the inside of a plot, and he may have been attempting to stop the assassination. But what the hell? You know, use him as the scapegoat, and maybe we'll get to Bobby Kennedy too. And later on, they did. Hard to say. Don't know about the Kennedy assassination. The one book on it that I really admire is one by a fellow named Jim Marrs. He's a pretty good journalist who actually spoke to a lot of the few remaining witnesses before they died, and some of his analysis of the Kennedy assassination is pretty good. I like that one. Oliver Stone, American cops shoot black Americans dead because it saves individual states millions of dollars in court costs. Hospital. Man, I tell you, that would be a sad commentary on America if that was the real justification for why police just, shoot black kids. We could save some money on the prison system if we just shoot them dead. A bullet's 25 cents and a year in jail is $60,000. So, it's good for the economy to just kill them, right? Man, that is sad. That would be a sad commentary on America if that was really the case. I've heard that too. I've heard that the autopsy of JFK was actually performed on Tippett's body. There was a police officer, Tippett, who even his friends remarked that he bore a striking resemblance to JFK, and quite a bit about that kind of falls into place. Hard to say. Bill Cosby. Believe it or not, I purposely avoided the Bill Cosby story. I'm aware of it. Obviously, it's in the news. Right now, I really don't know what to make of it. Here again. Bill Cosby is one of the few prominent black Americans who have come out and spoken sanity with regards to race relations in the United States. I don't know if you realize this or not. Bill Cosby recently came out and basically, took the black community to task. He said, "Look, stop blaming the white man for all your problems. Get off your ass. Quit having babies with 15 different women. You women, quit having these, baby daddies." And basically, he took his people to task for some of their social foibles. He's one of the few who came out publicly talking that way to the black community. Well, if you're trying to stir up, trouble between white people and black people, that's a message that you really do not want out there. So, it could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be that all these assaults on Bill Cosby could be paybacks for him not towing the party line. I don't know yet. I'm still looking into that one. I can tell you that, some of the evidence that's come out recently is pretty damning, and I'm not sure what to make of it. So that's kind of why I avoided the Cosby hot potato, at least for now. I may have something to say on that one later on. We'll just have to see. Yeah. What else did I miss? Civil forfeiture. Well, I've done a number of reports on civil forfeiture, including this woman who they floated this balloon. They floated the name of this woman to replace Eric Holder as chief of the Justice Department. That woman, in her duties as a federal prosecutor, has bragged about how she has brought in almost $1 billion in civil forfeiture revenues. That I reported on that a couple of weeks ago, I think. Civil forfeiture is, another one of these things that is an ongoing issue. I could probably have some little tidbit on civil forfeiture almost every week because this has been going on for quite a few years now, and it was originally put in place. What was happening is these drug lords have so damn much money that you'd arrest somebody on one of these Miami Vice type beefs, where he's smuggling in a boatload of cocaine or something. He has so much money that he could just buy his way through the legal system. So somebody who thought, okay, well, if they can do that, we'll just grab all their money so they can't hire the best attorneys in town. And it seemed like a great idea at the time when they were saying, oh, we're going to use this to battle these evil drug lords, but now it's being used against Canadian tourists. Canadian tourists are afraid to enter the United States with cash in their pocket because they're afraid if they're 2 miles over the speed limit, the cop could just snatch their cash. And if we're talking $2, $3, $4, $5, maybe $10,000 in cash the cops grab off of you, it costs you more than that to take them to court, try and get your money back. That's the way our legal system is skewed nowadays. And there has never been a situation where one of these civil forfeiture scenarios resulted in the police department being sued for damages. Most of the time, the worst they got to do is give back the money that they took. So the cops got nothing to lose. Now, if you could turn around and sue them for, something like false arrest or something, if you could sue that police department for falsely grabbing your cash or taking your car for no damn good reason. In other words, if they stood to face a significant penalty for their illegal activity, might stop. But the way the laws are written right now, they got nothing to lose. They can grab your cash, they can grab your car, they can grab whatever the hell they want. You then have to sue them to get back what was yours, and they face no penalty. They're held harmless for the initial illegal activity. It's screwed up. It's screwed up. It's a bad situation. Islam indoctrination in Maryland school. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't get comparative religion until I went into college. I took a college course on comparative religion, where we actually studied the tenets of the Quran and did comparisons between the various major religions. I studied Islam, I studied Judaism, I studied Christianity, I studied the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, the whole 9 yards. And it was a college level course that was intended to at least give you a rough idea of what these various belief systems were. I'm not sure that grade school is the appropriate place to introduce children to a study on comparative. Boy, that's a strong cigar. I'm not sure that grade school is the appropriate venue. A kid, 10, 12, 13 years old, it should be up to their parents to indoctrinate that child in whatever religious belief their family subscribes to. So I assume if you're growing up in a Muslim household, you'll be raised a Muslim. If you're growing up in a Catholic household, you'll be raised a Catholic. I just assume that. I wouldn't think that somebody in grade school or even in high school, I'm not even sure that maybe a junior or senior, maybe a junior or a senior in high school might have already developed their own religious philosophy to the point where they could be introduced to other religious philosophies and consume that feed on an intellectual level instead of a threat to their current belief system. I think when you start introducing Christian kids or Jewish kids to Islam in grade school or high school, that's like teaching sex education to kindergartners, which I understand some school systems are doing, including butt sex of all things. Good heavens. There's a time and place for everything. I just think, we're the educational system needs to be more sensitive to parents and not do things that, parents would consider offensive. I'm not sure. The folks in the chat room are referring to indoctrination, that children are being indoctrinated into Islam. I'm not sure that, I've not seen the courseware, so I don't know that it's an indoctrination or if it's just a, I don't see anything wrong with a Christian kid knowing a little bit about Islam. Okay, if they're teaching something like what I had in college, a course on comparative religion, that in and of itself is not a bad thing. Indoctrination would assume that you're teaching the kid that Islam is in some way superior to other, and coming up with logical proofs that show that Islam is a superior. That would be indoctrination. I'm not sure they're taking it that far. Sensitivity to other religions, I don't understand why that would be so threatening. It's the point where you introduce a child to something like that. I think, to me, I think a junior or senior in high school is probably intelligent enough, probably already comfortable enough with their own religious philosophy that they can look at somebody else's religious philosophy and not be threatened by it, at least handle it on an intellectual level. I'm not sure I could say that for somebody in grade school or middle school. Well, dump the religious crap and stick to science. Well, as far as I'm concerned, much of today's science is a religion. Science has, got its pragmatists, but yeah, science has evolved. What we call science has evolved into a religious philosophy, if you really look at it closely. The scientific method is out. I mean, nowadays, he who has the gold buys the science. This global warming thing is a perfect example. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of people out there have a vested interest in forcing you to pay for the carbon dioxide that you exhale. They think that's cool. Boy, if we could only tax them on the air they breathe. They're already trying to tax you on the food. They're trying to tax you on the water. They're trying to tax you on... Boy, I'll tell you what, if we could figure out a way to tax them for the air they breathe, carbon tax, that's it. Global warming, all of your exhaling is causing the earth to warm up. That's not science. If the results of the experiment, do not match the expectation, change the data, not the expectation. Yeah, science. If you really, really, really look at science as it's practiced in academia today, it's he who comes through with the grant money that gets the science. How about a general sin tax? I already pay, a huge portion of the cost of my tobacco products is tax. They already got so damn many sin taxes. The fact of the matter is, you got your income taxes, you got your outgo taxes, and you got your in-between taxes. So, they got plenty of different sources of revenue, but they're always looking for more. They're never satisfied. And they think you are nothing more than an ATM machine. And anytime they need a few bucks, I can just walk up and swipe a card and take some more. They think you are an unlimited resource for taxation. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, some people have to pay taxes on their taxes. That was one of the things that Gruber was hired to obscure, is how can we tax people for their medical benefits? Medical benefits have always been a deduction. You don't tax people on their medical expenses, but how can we get a piece of that action? So he had to obscure it. This guy Gruber is hopefully going to spill his guts before a Senate committee, and who knows. Do you think political parties should be funded only by the state? Frankly, I don't think there should be political parties. I think political parties should be illegal. But it's my opinion, and $5 get you a cup of coffee at that fancy yuppie place. Political parties are killing our republic. They are diluting your influence. That's not how it was supposed to work, although that's how it evolved. And it evolved that way very quickly. Political parties came into being in the early 1800s. I don't know how you avoid it. When it comes to, I'm not even sure elections are appropriate. It's whatever we've got right now. Let's put it this way: it does not seem to be working for the vast majority of us. Seems to be working real good for them, but it ain't working for us. Well, I tell you, I'm not seeing. Before I shut this thing down, we've gone about half an hour overtime now. Before I shut this thing down, one more time in the audience, was there any really high power item in the news this week that I just flat ignored or neglected? The Cosby thing, maybe in a couple of weeks after I've had more time to look at that one. I don't want to jump into that one before I really know what's going on. Right now, I'm not sure anybody really knows what's going on. For all I know, Bill Cosby had a real problem with keeping his pistol in his pocket. I just don't know. There is much to admire about the man, and if he has his foibles, well, he should be taken to task for it. And the number of women who have come forward, I mean, even in a full-fledged conspiracy where some evil bastard behind the curtains was after him and tried to, the volume of it coming forward is starting to look bad for Cosby. I'll tell you that, but don't know enough about that one to really make up my mind on it. I'm not sure that there was any other item in the news that was really killer. Yeah, Cosby's worth a few bucks, yeah. The Hong Kong protests are still going on. Well, hang him, I'm not so sure. 6x9 with Bubba? Yeah, probably. Well, as far as the early winter goes, I think I reported on that one pretty heavily last week. The terrible thing is those poor folks up in the Buffalo area, up in that part of New York, they got thumped. I mean, they got like 6, 7, 8 inches of snow, 6, 7 feet. Here in the D.C. area, we get 6, 7 inches of snow. We're absolutely crippled. Up where they are, they got like 6 or 7 feet of snow last week. And then all of a sudden they got springtime weather. So, they're gonna have an immediate thaw. Can you imagine the flooding? I understand, there was so much snow that even up there, they built, they're used to snow up in that part of the country. They build their houses with real tough roofs that can usually stand a pretty heavy snow cover. There were houses, the roofs were collapsing. And now there's houses that are being washed away in floods because it's all melting off so fast. I don't know what Buffalo, New York did to piss God off, but he seems to have it in for him. Polar vortex from geoengineering. Geoengineering is a big story. I mean, is it going on? Probably. And some of it is probably evil as hell. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if some of the stuff they're spraying out of those airplanes is like, Raid and We're the Roaches. But, there's a number of different people doing it, and there's a number of different cocktails being sprayed. And, some of it's probably pretty benign, although the end results, it's like salting the fields of Carthage, some of the barium salts and aluminum and so forth that are coming out of those geoengineering efforts. It ain't healthy for the soil, but a lot of that is theory, and nobody really knows for sure. Nobody really knows. So I don't know. Polar vortex, that's what they're calling it. I don't know that geoengineering and or HARP has anything to do with it. It could just be, that big yellow ball in the sky that is really the force behind, 85, 90% of our weather. Yeah, chemtrails are just tenderizer, yeah. Starfish, yeah. Did you hear about, those starfish are dying because of some benign virus. Wait a minute now, a benign virus that to starfish dissolves them? I'm not sure that's terribly benign. Personally, I think the starfish, because of where they fit on the food chain, they're filter feeders. They eat plankton and bacterium that float around in the water. And those plankton and bacterium are probably bioaccumulating radioactive isotopes from Fukushima. And the starfish filter feed them. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the starfish die-off isn't caused by, they're one of the first species to succumb to the radiation from Fukushima. But again, do I know that for a fact? No. But, you put 2 and 2 together, it comes up 4. Okay. Just have to see. Polar vortex was known and defined 30 years ago. Yeah, this has happened before. See, I grew up in the 60s, and in the Washington metropolitan area, we had what we were still to this day, those of us who are old enough to remember, we refer to it as the Blizzard of 66. And here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, south of the Mason-Dixon line, we got zapped with about, 3-4 feet of snow. And me and my little brothers were digging tunnels in the front yard. We thought that was cool. We'd never seen a snow like that, So, and that was a polar vortex. Now, that was the last time that the sun was in a cycle similar to what we're seeing right now. So I think it just, it's gone full circle. We had, a few decades there of very moderate weather. And now we're moving into what will probably be a decade or two of very violent weather. Get used to it. Now, where I have a problem is when somebody like Al Gore comes up and says that these, changes in climate are your fault, and the only way we can solve it is if you pay yet another tax. Okay? That offends me. I believe that, people who come up with bullshit like that, bullshit with a capital B, are just trying to get one over on me. They're trying to treat me like a child. No, it's solar activity drives the weather. Now, can human beings have very confined impact on weather in a very tight geographic area? Yeah, okay. Go to L.A. in the middle of the summer when the air is not moving around much and it's held in that basin, and you got, about 2 million people driving around in cars. You'll see the smog. It's a layer that hangs over the city. You'll breathe it. It'll burn your eyes. Can all those people sitting in a bowl running their automobiles with no air circulation, can that have a localized impact on weather in L.A.? Sure. However, is that problem in L.A. really impacting people in Topeka, Kansas? No. They don't know about it. So, localized effects? Yes, human activity can have some localized effects. But this global climate change, because you ate burritos last night and had a bad case of gas and you need to pay a tax because of it. Look, I was not born yesterday. My wife tells me that we may have some snow here tonight. I don't know. We've heard a couple we've heard rumors about stuff, but if I wake up in the morning and there's snow on the ground, that'll be unusual. Our weather here, while the people in upstate New York were getting thumped, my weather here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area was very mild. We had a couple of days where it was in the 60s and 70s. And I was here scratching my head saying, where's all this snow? That's just a few hundred miles north of me. All righty. Guys, I think I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. It has been a long one for me. I still need to package this thing up and get it ready for uploading to YouTube. So one more time, going once, any hot item in the news that we just really, really, really need to talk to. I think I got all that. Yeah, I think that's it for me, guys. I'm going to go ahead and back on out of here. But you can bet you that next Tuesday I will be back to do some more barking at the moon, and we'll just do it all over again. Good night, all.
Love of the turnarounds. None of us are leaving here alive. Whoa, what will you say? What will you say? And what will you do? What will you do? What will you do? Oh, I'm calling out to you. Won't you turn around? Oh, I'm calling out to you. Won't you turn around?